One second, everyone. I apologize. Oh, it's recording at the bottom of my screen. Okay.
Okay, you should be good to go now.
Okay. So we are recording. Apologies, digital in the age, sometimes you have these hiccups. So one thing I wanted to acknowledge as a part of, let me go back into slideshow from current slide, is I wanted to acknowledge what's happening with COVID and how it's affecting the industry. So one thing that's happening is a lot of people are pulling back, and typically when there is a crisis or a recession, people pull back in marketing. It's one of the first places they pull dollars from, and I've seen it with a lot of my clients and my agency is people have to let people go, unfortunately, or they pull their marketing budget as finances are getting tighter. So you can see here in Q2, agencies and brands, 70% are making adjustments to their budgets. And so you may be feeling the pinch as well for businesses that you represent or you work for or you run yourself. Budgets are being pulled back in a lot of cases. And what's happening even more for the second half of 2020, you can see there's a lot of uncertainty. And so it's still to be determined. We really don't know a lot about what the economy is going to look like in the second half of the year. My general sense is as we get closer to Q4 and into the holidays period, people are going to have to ramp up regardless because they need to sell products, and people can only take such a long period of time without maybe increasing their brand presence. So I do expect by September, October to see people spending more again. But for now, less people are in the marketplace. And there's actually some positives to this, which I'll get into in a minute. But this is kind of hitting on the overall industry. And one of the things that we're seeing at a high level is that there's a lot of uncertainty, so people are pulling back budget. So as we get into the meat of the presentation, it's like where is the money, right? Where are people spending their money? And Google and Facebook are the two dominant players, right? So this is a Facebook versus Google share of total US digital ad spending from 2016 to 20. You can see that they're making up over 50% of the marketplace, and people call it a duopoly. Pretty much almost all of small business dollars are going into Google and Facebook. And the reason for that is that it's a very practical platform. It's self-service. You don't need a lot of money to run in them. And so people are gravitating these platforms on top of them being just digital in nature. They're also where people are. I mean, most people in our day-to-day lives are on Google in some capacity, searching for things, or on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. People are just on those every day, all day. So you can see that they make up a large percentage. Now, for those that sell products, Amazon is really growing quickly and could be the third largest platform in 2020. And I'm actually expecting that to move quicker now that we're in a new scenario with COVID where people are online and at home and need things shipped to them quickly. So Amazon is growing from an advertising standpoint. So if you are selling products, you may be listed on Amazon, you may not be listed on Amazon, but a lot of people are using Amazon because they have tons of data on all of us. I'm imagining most people in this webinar right now are Amazon Prime members or active Amazon shoppers. They have so much information on us that as a marketer, you can take advantage of that and to get in front of the right people. So Amazon is going to, over time, be kind of like the third leg of the tripod, and that these are going to be the three biggest players moving through this decade. So as we get into so now we're going to kind of move into some of the digital channels itself. So I start with Google and Google Ads, and specifically paid search. So I like to say paid search is the lowest hanging fruit. And the reason for it is it's push versus pull marketing, right? So it's kind of a classic concept of advertising, which is most advertising is push. I send a message out to the world and hopefully they receive it. Where search is pull marketing. People are typing something into a navigation, and we as marketers are trying to get in front of them with our advertising. And so that's why I call it low-hanging fruit. If someone is searching for something, if I can get my ad in front of them, hopefully I can steer them in a direction, which is my site, and then they can go onto the site and take an action that they prefer. So I actually pulled this in. This is actually like a quick audible on my part, but I wanted to add in some visuals for those that may be less familiar with search and what ads look like. And maybe there's some things that are new that maybe you didn't notice in the past. So I know there's a lot on the screen right now. but I actually want to share with you two different search scenarios and all the ads that are showing up on a page and how competitive it is. So on the left-hand side here, we have a very broad search, which is running shoes, right? So someone's just looking for running shoes. It could be just for more education. It could be they're actually in market for it. But what you see is that there's actually two different types of ads. There's the classic search ads, which are text-based, which is on the left, but then there's also these shopping ads. So you may not have noticed that before, but what's happening is if you're selling a product, you can actually use your product feed and have it pulled into Google. And then when people click on these ads, people can click on these ads and you show up at the top of the page and in a prominent position. And so this is, you can look at on one search term, which is running shoes, there is 4 different text ads and 6 different visuals that are options for people. So before they ever get to organic listings and anything that is free, there's all these paid opportunities. And you can see that a lot of people are trying to jump into it. So it is highly competitive, hence why if you're running search, there's a lot of nuance in how to run the campaigns. Regardless, it's typically the first place that people spend their money, because if I'm looking for running shoes, why not get in front of them with the search ad and drive them to my site? And I actually pulled up a Nike shoe. So if someone's actually looking for Nike, you could say, well, why would Nike run advertising if someone's already looking for their shoes? Well, they want to make sure that they're blocking out other advertisers, and they want to make sure they're showing up front and center. So even for some of you that make, and I don't know everyone's roles and responsibilities at the companies or what they're trying to get from this, but if you're advertising your own products, you still need to run advertising for people looking for you. So don't shy away from what's called brand ads, because if I look for Nike, now I can show up prominently with visuals and ads that are tailored to the message I want, versus organic, which are listings that are lower on the page and maybe harder to find. So I just wanted to kind of share with you what the landscape looks like, and that's why I highlighted the yellow parts, just to show you how many different ads are on a page at a given time. One thing also I wanted to quickly touch on from a paid search standpoint, and so some of this again is going to be maybe basic for others, maybe it's informational for others, but the great thing, another reason why people lean on paid search is like their first dollar spent is, one, it's the pull-in marketing, but 2 is it's on a cost per click basis. So if people do not click on your ads, you do not pay for your ads, where most of the other platforms are paying based on impressions versus clicks. So that's another advantage that search has for you. So secondly, within the Google ecosystem is YouTube. And I put YouTube as a monster because it's the second largest search engine in the world. And typically marketers, we don't think of it that way. We think of like Bing maybe, or Yahoo, or maybe some other older search platforms, but people are looking for things on YouTube. They're looking for education, information. And so what you can do within Google, all powered by Google, is run YouTube ads. And in your own experiences, you may notice it's typically pre-roll, is you look for content, and before you see your content, an ad shows up. And I know it's very easy to skip on the ads after 6 seconds, and a lot of people do, but you'd be surprised at how many people actually stick with the videos if it's really good content. So this is a good opportunity to get in front of a qualified audience who is looking for certain content. And the targeting in YouTube is very specific. You can get down to the keyword level. You can get down to the channel, like a YouTube channel, and then your ads can show up in front of that. You can target topics of interest or keywords, and there's a lot of different ways that you can get in front of people. So I'd like to acknowledge that YouTube is sometimes an underrated platform. It's not going to drive a lot of clicks, and I understand that, and sometimes people just don't have video assets, so it's a difficult, maybe it's a hurdle, a higher hurdle, because you actually have to have video to run, and polished video. But I like to acknowledge that the Google ecosystem between paid search and YouTube is very large, and there's a lot of good opportunities there. We'll talk about, as we move in here, about how to think about each of these platforms, and how to think about all these platforms, and maybe how to prioritize them. So that's going to be a little bit later. But first I want to run through these and give you a level set on each of them and the pros and cons. So next up is Facebook. Some people, you may be hearing Facebook is dying or slowing down, or its growth is halting. That is not nearly the case. Facebook is still enormous. It is still the largest platform by a long ways, and it's actually followed up by Instagram, which is owned by Facebook. So sometimes this is where advertising gets confusing, is I could say the term Facebook, but I actually mean Facebook and Instagram together. So the two together are just really big. And if you look at the top 3, when you count Facebook Messenger, literally Facebook owns 3 of the biggest apps in the world. And so there's just huge advertising opportunities, and it's why most of you have heard about Facebook advertising, have run Facebook advertising, and are spending your money there. So I like to say that although Facebook is highly competitive and there may be some attrition happening with its audiences, it's still enormous, and it's going to take a long time for Facebook to see diminishing scale. So Facebook is typically that second dollar. So people say, if I had $1 to spend on advertising, I would spend it in paid search. If I had a second dollar, I would certainly spend it in Facebook and Instagram. And then you have your secondary platforms like Twitter, Pinterest, Reddit, Snapchat, etc. One thing I kind of alluded to is Facebook and Instagram. You may notice from a platform, some of you on the call may be on one platform or the other, or both, is organically they feel different, right? They look different. The type of content that goes on them is different. But from an advertising perspective, and this is what we're here for, is when you are advertising, they operate more like brother and sister. So like 3-4 years ago, I used to say they were like cousins. They were in the same family, but they weren't that similar. Now they're more like brother, sister. They are in the same family. Yes, they're different, but from an advertising standpoint, they're just much closer in nature. So don't think of Facebook and Instagram independently. When you're advertising, think of them as a group. It's actually helping you scale and get more efficiency on your campaigns versus less. And I wanted to, I'm actually going to do something just to kind of highlight that, because I like to show the real world. And this is actually the Facebook platform itself. And some of you this may be too 101 for you, but I just wanted to highlight, this is just everyone on the platform 18 plus in the United States. Between Facebook and Instagram, there's 230 million people you could target. And you can target them in so many different ways, right? There's so many different opportunities to target people based on interest, behaviors, etc. So 230 million is a big pool to work with. And even if you're targeting someone local to Seattle or Olympia or Washington State or the Northwest, this 230 million can still be very large and scalable for you. So that's another reason people lean on this platform, is just the scale is enormous. And Facebook has a lot of different options for you to succeed. And so that is typically why Facebook is one of the first platforms that people think of. So media is cheaper. So what's happening, and this is relative to COVID, this is off of this, is media has gotten cheaper. So one thing that's happening is this softer purple line was last year. And then the darker purple line is this year. So remember when I said earlier that people were pulling back their budgets? Well, what's happening is people are spending less money, and it means there's less competition. Less competition means cheaper media. So there is something to be said for taking advantage of the situation. If you do have marketing dollars or you can afford to spend, this is actually a pretty good time to spend, because people are still buying and the media is really cheap. And this cost per click is kind of correlating. It's by regions across the world. But if you look at North America here, the cost per clicks have been steadily dropping as we headed into February and March and continuing that. So this is just kind of hitting on the COVID aspect of it. So that's kind of touching on Google and Facebook, the two key platforms. I want to quickly run through some of the other things and digital channels that you may be thinking of. And again, if you have questions, feel free to add it to the chat and we'll try to get to them later. So I included TikTok early on. It's because, for some, TikTok is kind of exploding right now and they're having a moment. And it's because people are looking for entertainment at this time. They're at home, and TikTok is user-generated content. And it's a really good platform that is growing. And you can see it here is just look at the month-over-month growth in the United States from 35 million users in January to 52 million users. So TikTok, yes, it's very much for a younger audience, but it's not just for 13 and 15-year-olds. It's actually growing. And I like to say that I have similar feelings about Snapchat, but if you're advertising to people 30 or younger, and that's a part of your core audience, TikTok is a serious platform that you need to consider, similar to Snapchat. Now, if your audience is 35 plus in B2B, probably TikTok isn't the place to go, but I wanted to at least acknowledge that there's more platforms and more opportunities to advertise than ever before. So it's not just Google and Facebook. There's other platforms like TikTok and Snapchat. Next, I wanted to talk about some trends. Video continues to grow. So one thing I wanted to hit on was video, especially in digital or on mobile, excuse me. So one of the things that is a higher level is right now, all of us are on our computers. And we're working day to day in most of the world that we interact with, which is on our computers. But, oh, excuse me, what's happening is most of your day on these apps are actually on your mobile phone. So for search, 50% of searches happen on mobile devices, and that's growing. And on Facebook and Instagram, 90+% of all impressions on Facebook are mobile, and 99% of Instagram are mobile. So what that means is mobile first is growing, and with that, people are introducing video in their advertising. So I understand that resources may be tight at times, but if you do have video assets, video is very important to advertising now. And so I like to say that video is not just about awareness. We don't need to think about video like commercials. We need to think about video as a way to create motion and engagement with ads so people stop. Think about your own experiences. If you're on Instagram or Facebook after this webinar, you're scrolling through. Think about how quick you can scroll through ads and the feed. You scroll through so quickly. So what's going to get you to stop? A lot of times animation, motion, video is going to get you to stop, engage, pay attention. So video just continues to explode, and more advertisers are leveraging video where they can. And I see a couple chats come in, and we'll definitely get to those as we go along. So I did not forget about those. So next is streaming audio. Streaming audio fits into a couple places. One is Pandora and Spotify are the kind of two big players. And you can see here with this black bar, there's a black bar that's increasing. So traditional radio is still actually relatively large day to day, but what's exploding is the digital form. So this is where it comes to digital advertising. If you have, if you feel like you want to get in front of an audience that's listening, and if you were interested ever in radio, well, digital radio or digital audio like Pandora and Spotify are options for you. And it's growing, and there's plenty of scale available. And then on top of that, there's podcasts, which is actually something completely separate, where podcasting continues to grow. The amount of podcasts, the amount of time spent on podcasts. And so you can see it from an ad revenue is typically advertisers follow trends. And you can see if ad revenue is going up, that means users are going up, scale is going up. And so there's just large growth in podcasting. So these kind of two work hand in hand. They're like different in the way that the advertising is served, but they operate similar in that you're listening to something on your phone. It's not really clickable, and it's all about listening and audio. So I like to highlight this because audio just continues to grow, and I think it's a nice compliment to people that were traditionally in radio and doing a lot of radio ads. Shifting it to digital can get you more in that environment, and you can get better targeting than you'd get in traditional radio advertising. So I've been talking your ear off for about 20 minutes, and it's like, great. You know, I may know some of the stuff, I may not know some of the stuff, but like, how do I get going? Like, where does this lead me? And how do I take all this information? And how do I get moving with an actual media plan, or how do I actually execute on all this? So what do? Getting started. This is actually something I pulled from one of my digital marketing classes. And this is actually a user flow of how to think through campaigns, right? And the very first thing you have to do is set an objective. So you have a campaign, let's just say it's a Father's Day. So Father's Day is a month away, and you want to run a Father's Day campaign for whatever reason. That's great, that's an idea. But before you get too tactical and in the weeds with, oh, we should create an ad that looks like this, or we need a visual that looks like this, the first thing you should do is set your objectives. What do I want to achieve with all of this? Do I want to sell something? Do I want to raise awareness? Do I want to educate? What is my goal? And you need to set an actionable and hopefully measurable objective. Like, I want to sell widgets at a $20 cost per conversion, right? That is a measurable goal that we can track, and it's related to the Father's Day campaign. And then you kind of move down. Then you define your KPIs. So KPIs in advertising, there's a lot of three-letter acronyms. KPIs just means key performance indicators. And really, it's just a number. So what is the number we want to hit? And I kind of hit that. It's like, we want to hit a $20 CPA. That's our goal. We want to sell products at 20 bucks or less. If we do it less than 20 bucks, we're going to be happy. If we do it for more, we'll be less than happy. Then the next thing you do is you design your tactics, and tactics are things that we just talked about. So don't make the decision to go into Facebook or Google. First define everything and then make those decisions. And that's why I say, like, following this flow is very important. Then you pick your tactics out, like, we're going to be on Google and Facebook. Then you say, we're going to have to run our campaign, which is the execution of it. We're going to measure the outcomes, and then we're going to optimize those results. And so this is where, whether you're doing things in-house or you work with a friend who's helping you or an agency, this is what I do as an agency, is pretty much this process is what I work with brands on. And so whether you're doing things internally, externally, whatever it may be, is having this mindset of working yourself from the highest level down is going to be important. It's going to make your campaigns well thought out and structured in a way it's going to give you the best success possible. So start with what you want to achieve and move your way down to what are the tactics, and then run, and then go from there. So the digital channels, we kind of hit on this, but these are kind of the 6 major groupings of places that you could spend your money, right? And so this is actually a slide from my personal business deck, which is, we want to build strategic media plans that get results in line with your business needs. It's a lot of word jargon, whatever, you can call it a little bit of BS, but really what we're trying to say is, depending on your budget, depending on your objectives, we are going to pick the channels that are best for you. So is it paid social? Is it paid search? Is it display advertising? Is it video? Is it streaming audio? Is it native? Is it a combination of one or the other? Who gets what dollars? Does paid search get more than paid social, right? Based on everything we did here, we can make decisions here. And so this is why I started with all those platforms. Now you're armed with the much information. So when you get into the planning and you're trying to execute on your campaign, you can kind of pick the right digital channels and the options within those digital channels that work for you. So here's all the things to consider, and there's a lot. Campaign management and optimization. Who is going to manage these campaigns? Who's going to put them together? Who's going to execute them? Who's going to be looking at them day in, day out? Some of you may be running campaigns yourself, but some things are heavier lift than others. But who's going to be putting together these plans, executing them, and making sure they're running properly? Who's going to be pulling reporting? You know, these platforms are very automated nowadays, but you still need to be reporting, because even if you're at a small business, you may have a partner or other coworkers. You may have investors. You may have other people you need to report to. How are you going to take that data, organize it, and present it in a way? This third thing is very important, which is conversion tracking and setup. And, you know, I've had to really, it's taken me 5 years. You know, I've had to continually work on this, and there's always new curveballs that get thrown my way. But conversion tracking is very important, whether it's in Google Analytics or setting up pixels and setting up Facebook or Google pixels on the site. You need to make sure those are tracking properly, and that's being linked back to the ads that you're running. So if I run a Facebook campaign, I need to make sure that I have tracking in place so that I can measure my performance. Because if I spend $1,000 on ads and I don't track it, how do I know what I got from it, right? And so now with Pixels and Google Analytics, you can tie all these things together so it's very measurable. Test and learn plans are, the reason I have that here is you need to be always optimizing and thinking forward, right? So just because you built an ad that was successful today, chances are that ad will not be successful for long. So you need to be always continually working and evolving. And guess what? And I'm going to get this in a little bit, but you're going to fail a lot. Right? I still fail. Like there's no guarantees in any of this. But what you need to do is test, learn, and move quickly. And so you can do this formally with some kind of Excel spreadsheet with weeks and grids and all that stuff. But at least in an informal route, you should be thinking, always be testing and learning, always be trying to try something new. Never, even if you have good results, try to find better or try to replicate those good results. And that, always having that mentality is going to be very important. And then lastly is creative, right? So one thing that happens is people may say, oh, I'm interested in this or that, but do you have the assets to do so? Do you have the funds to create a video? Can you afford graphic designers? Do you have internal teams that can do those things? And if you do, great, but do they have the bandwidth to turn those around very quickly? I mean, this is part of the reason why agencies exist, is because a lot of times people don't have all these resources in-house. And so they work with agencies or partners, or they hire people internally to do these things, because this is a lot of work and it takes a lot of day-to-day maintenance. And so you need to be thinking about all the different spec types, all the different asset creation you're going to need to run even a Facebook, like a Facebook campaign. Let's take it the most basic level. How many images, how many assets do you need to run a Facebook campaign? If you're going to run it for a month or 6 months, how many are you going to need? So these are all the things that you must be thinking about as you go along. So I wanted to share with you, this is very in the weeds, but these are the kind of things that you need to be thinking about. And this is an actual client that I was working with, and they had $1 million budget for the year. And to some people on the call, $1 million can sound like a lot. Like, don't get intimidated by this, because everything in the world is relative. To some people I work with clients that have $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month or less. I work with other clients that have spend $100,000 or more a month, and some people that spend millions a year. But what I like to do is I like to use Excel to map this out and create a budget plan. And I actually create different versions, which give me different scenarios. So in this case, this is actually for a client. They are a sugar replacement product, and they've been increasing their marketing budget, and so they have $1 million budget. And so what we did is we looked at different options and how to split budgets up throughout the course of the year. And this is a good way to understand how you're spending your money and if you have enough money. So if you have $1 million, you can do five or six or seven different things over the course of the year. But if you have a $5,000 budget, you know, there's an old client I used to have that used to say, "Are you spreading the peanut butter too thin?" Which is a great line, because it's true. If you came to me and said, "Chris, I have $5,000 to spend, what would you recommend?" I would not recommend 7 different things, because that's just too much. You're not going to get enough learning from it. You're spreading yourself too thin. And honestly, if you're spending $5,000, you probably don't have the resources to work on 7 different platforms. So you need to kind of think, if I have less money, I should do less and put more eggs in one basket, or maybe 1 to 2 baskets. Where if I have a lot more money, I can start to spread that out over multiple baskets and maybe test and learn different things. And one thing you'll learn here too is that you don't have to do everything in 1 month, right? Or 1 week. So just because you don't have a large budget, maybe you test one thing 1 month and another thing in another month, right? So you have to get creative with it. Just because you ran Facebook today doesn't mean you have to run Facebook forever. You could try something different down the road. Maybe Pinterest is more of an interest for you, right? Or Twitter, or YouTube, or audio, right? Test those things over time and then look back and see what you did with it. So I like to say, when you budget and plan, definitely try to work off of Excel. Map it out, and you can break this out. Right now I have it broken out by month. You could have this broken out by week if you really wanted to. That would be the most granular I would say you could do. So I have clients that when I plan 1 month or 2 month campaigns, I literally, instead of doing it month to month, I'll actually do the weeks, and then I'll give them an idea of how much is being spent per month. And a question that you may be thinking is, and I get this a lot with smaller businesses, is like, what's the minimum I should spend to like make it worth my time? And that's a tough question. It depends on if you're running a national campaign or a local campaign. But I would like to say, if you only have a couple $100 or like $1,000, or it's getting a little tight, right? You're going to have to be really smart about it, because I'm not going to say it's a no. It's not a hard no. But if you have very little budget, you have to think very smart. So maybe it's not running advertising for a month. Maybe if you only have $1,000, you only spend it for 1 week, so that you can spend more of it in a tighter, concentrated area versus spreading it out too thin. So those are all the decisions. And I know everyone on the call today could be having different thoughts about their own budgets, or things that they have experience with in the past. So happy to answer questions about that. But I just wanted to give you an understanding of how I typically think about budgets and what are the best practices and how you go about spending money. So I want to, as we kind of are getting closer to the end here, I want to say, expect to fail a lot, right? This is definitely a test and learn, and it never ends. It's not even mistakes. It shouldn't be viewed as mistakes. It should be viewed as, we run campaigns that do not succeed. I'm working with a client right now that's an app, and it's a pretty cool app, and they're spending a lot of money. And they were asking us, they came to us, and I'm partnering with a creative agency. And they said, well, we want to improve our install rates, right? And our cost per install. And they're advertising very heavily on Facebook and Instagram. And so they asked us for new creative. And so we came up with this really cool concept, and we ran some ads, and it fell completely flat. It didn't work. So we had to create an iteration. And the second iteration we tried, and guess what? It failed again. But they didn't give up. They didn't say, we don't believe in this idea. So we actually ran it a third time with different messaging and different creative. And guess what? It worked. So it takes time and effort and patience. So it's very much like a scientific method here. And this is literally where this is pulled from. You have a hypothesis, you experiment, you analyze, you come up with a conclusion, and then you observe, and then you go back, right? So this process is this never-ending cycle, and it should literally never end. In 3 years from now, you'll still be doing this process because brands are always going to continue to try to grow, expand, do more, be more efficient. And so this process needs to happen, and you're going to have ups and downs, but hopefully over time, you're going to have a lot of learnings that will improve, or will help you improve. So I'm wrapping up here with some resources. If you're looking to stay on top of these things, where do I get a lot of this data? How do I stay on top of things? You know, I'm a big fan of Twitter for information. Twitter has its pros and cons, but it's a pretty good news aggregator and information aggregator. And so Search Engine Land, Ad Age, eMarketer, these are 3 platforms or 3 sites that are really good at giving information. So if you just want to get some tidbits of information, maybe some how-tos, and it sparks some creativity. So Ad Age is all about the advertising industry. And even if it's going to talk about Coke and Amazon and all these big players that maybe we don't relate to, it could inspire you. Maybe there's an idea that's going to come from that, and you're like, oh, that would be great if we could iterate off that and do something for ourselves, right? I don't work with multi-million, you know, I'm rarely working with companies that spend 5, 10, 50, $100 million a year. I'm not working with those type of clients, but I can still draw inspiration from them. And eMarketer, Search Engine Land, these are platforms that allow you to really get detailed analytical information like trends and where are people spending their money. A lot of the slides that you saw today were pulled from these sites. So I like to give this because continual education is very important. So if you're interested in this topic of advertising and you want to learn more and you are running campaigns or work with people that are running campaigns, I think these are good starting resources to help you continue your education on top of coming to webinars like this, which I really do appreciate. So my company, DNW Digital, it actually stands for Detroit Northwest. This screenshot is actually a screenshot of Detroit and Seattle combined. It's kind of hard to see. So DNW Digital, but I saw there was a couple chat questions. So what I'm going to do is stop the share really quickly, and I saw some chats, and I can answer some questions. So I got 2 questions. I got one question from Lisa Stubing. Apologize if I didn't spell that properly. It says, does short animated video do okay on YouTube advertising? So this is a good question for if you have video assets, how we should use it. When you say short, do you mean like 15 seconds or less? I see Lisa on here. Do you mean shorter than that?
Actually, I don't know. I don't have it yet.
Okay. So what I'd say, okay, so typically shorter is better. So one of the things that's important, this is actually a good question because it leads to a larger conversation, is do 1-minute videos work? Do 30-second videos work? 15 or 6. So you can actually run ads now that are non-skippable. You run them 6 seconds and no one even has a chance to skip. What I like to say is if you're on YouTube, I like to stick to about 15 seconds or less is my go-to. And if you're on Facebook, people think in 15s and 30s because they think of commercials and TV. I like to say make your ad as short or as long as you want, whatever you think is going to draw people in. My one tip, if you're running video content, is the first 1 to 3 seconds are the most important. If you are on your phone, you are scrolling so fast. If people are going to pay attention, like a lot of people want to storytell, they want to have this build up, right? That doesn't work typically because you need to draw people in 3 seconds. People have short attention spans. So I like to say, get some branding in the first 3 seconds, pull people in, have them be interested in it, and then they'll stick with it longer. So whether it's a social ad or a YouTube ad, those first few seconds are the most important.
And then animated versus actual video?
Yeah, I mean, I think whatever your preference is, and we have a few other questions, and we're going to get to them. So thank you, everyone. I think animation's great. It could be a cost-effective way of doing things because if you don't have, especially with COVID going on right now, people can't go out and shoot video. So I'm a fan of animations, and I think what I like to say with creative, I'm a media guy who has some creative experience, not designing, but working with it. I like to say is do what's best for your brand. And if you think animation's best for your brand, roll with it. There's a question here, what do I mean by native advertising? So I didn't touch on this because it's not the most popular form of native or advertising, but what native advertising means is if you've ever been on an article, and if at the bottom, if you've ever noticed suggested articles before, some of those are sponsored. So I can get in front of people. And so native is, think of content marketing, listicles, like BuzzFeed type stuff. Top 5 this, top 10 this, or more educational information. So if I have a brand that's trying to educate people, native is a good way to do that because it's playing off of people looking at content like an article. And at the bottom of the article, it's like, you're reading this, you may also like this. So I recommend if you're ever on CNN.com and you're on an article, you'll notice suggested articles. I don't know if any of you are ever on Yahoo anymore or whatever, but Yahoo has in their feed, they have like articles, but then they have sponsored articles within that. And so that's considered native. Native is pretty much anything that's in the feed or suggested articles. That's what's considered native. And it's very much for education. A question I have here is, what is your take on all the middlemen trying to get between us and customers like Yelp, Thumbtack, HomeAdvisor, etc.? Okay, that's an interesting question. That's more of, I mean, it relates to advertising because you can actually advertise in Yelp or Thumbtack or HomeAdvisor. I think, you know, those sites, apps, etc., their job is to make the user experience as seamless as possible and easy, right? People have pain points. And so from an advertiser, I could see that being a frustration, but from a user, the users find these helpful because it's hard to find information. There's almost too much information. And so I think that it's just like a necessary, I won't call it evil. I just think that they're a necessary part of the system. I won't say they're getting, you know, I don't know which brand you're maybe thinking of in that, but from an advertiser standpoint of brand, you can actually use Yelp or HomeAdvisor as a way to get into those users because they have all of those sites like Yelp have a user base. Like Yelp probably has 100 million users and they have a lot of information on them. So you can actually get in front of people in Yelp because that's where they are. So I don't view them as obstacles. I just view them as a part of like the ecosystem. So apologies if that's not what you meant, but that's, I guess, how I interpret it. I'm trying to zip through this because, again, there's been a few questions and we have only a few more minutes. It says, can you suggest an ad that brings the viewer in the first 3 seconds? I like to go onto YouTube or look, really what you should do is start paying attention to your social ads when you're on Facebook and Instagram. I know a lot of people don't like ads or they skip or click or don't click. I like to go on, I actually click on a lot of ads because I like to see what's going on in the world. So what I would say is, I can't share with you an example in this exact moment, but I've just seen too many ads that go too slow. And if people can skip or scroll past you, how do I pull people in? And so I can't point you to an ad in this like very moment off the top of my head. I just know from talking to enough creative people and my experiences that when people run slow, dragged out ads, they typically underperform other ads that go quicker and kind of get you to the point faster. There's a lot of questions in here, which this is great. Thoughts on blogging and ads. This is from Christine. That one, blogging and ads. Christine, can you clarify really quickly in a couple seconds? Maybe hop on. I'm going to answer one quick question on native before Christine. So there was a follow-up question, which was to add on to the native advertising to clarify. You can pay to have your article on your website as a sponsored article. So this is on other people's websites. So you pay to have your content. So you're a marketer. You can pay to have your ads on other people's sites, right? So I'm actually going to see if I can find something really quickly. So in essence, you are literally trying to pay to get on other people's sites with relevant information that people may find interesting. Okay, I'm going to share my screen really quickly. This is a CNN ad. This is a CNN article, right? Whatever. At the bottom of the page, it says paid content. And there's a thumbnail and a headline, right? You can actually have your ads show up and they see how they look different. They look like articles. They look like they're native. They feel organic to the content in the sense that they live within the flow of the content. They're not to the side. They're right underneath. And these are all ads. These are literally Converse is paying an ad, investing.com, right? All of these are advertisers spending money to get in front of this content. And it doesn't have to be relative to Joe Biden and whether who's his running mate going to be, right? It's going to be, it's just that they wanted to get in front of this content. So that is what native advertising is. This is the look and feel of it. And it's different than other forms of advertising. Christine, can you jump in real quick with your blogging question? Okay. We have a different Christine Sloan. Do you have any recommendations on how to improve our business social media accounts? Any specific books to read or companies that do good social media classes? So typically I get my inspiration. I'm going to share with everyone something. So if you ever want inspiration, Facebook has added this ads transparency tool, which allows you to see what any company in the world is doing for advertising. So if you ever go to Facebook and in the search bar, just find the company, and I'm actually going to show everyone this right now. So this is how I get inspiration, and I'll share with you something else. So if you're on Facebook, if anyone goes to a brand, so this is actually, here's a brand I was looking at the other day. I work with a bike company, so here's a competitor. If you ever go to their page, there's a part called page transparency, and if you ever click on that, a window pops up, and then if you go to the ad library, you can actually see all the advertising that's running. So this is a great way to get an idea. So go to your competitors or go to people that you want to get inspired from and start to stalk them a little bit. Start to see what they're doing. And then you can just look up any brand. You can look up, like I can go to Nike, literally go to Nike, and I can see all of Nike's advertising right now and all their ad variations. So this is a great way to get inspiration. Other ways, there's a lot of one-day classes specific on social media at like a General Assembly. There's probably a lot of people doing tutorials. I like to avoid those know-it-all guys. There's some guys that are advertising nowadays that claim, I can improve this or that. Like those are a little bit too snake oil salesman to me, but there's definitely classes that are available that you can potentially go find online. General Assembly is something local to Seattle that has classes, and I know that I've taught some of these classes. They do one-day seminars on like social media specifically, whether it's organic or paid. And then if you are a blogger, do you have ads to your page? Okay, so this is interesting. So you're a blogger, you want to get more people visible to your site. That's what I'm guessing Christine is asking. If you want more people to come to your site, yes, running advertising can be effective. You just have to back out the math. I was actually working with a site. Has anyone ever heard of GeekWire before? Well, I guess I don't see everyone. So nod your head. If people have probably heard of GeekWire, right? They're local to Seattle. I actually ran advertising on their behalf because they had content that they wanted to promote, and we ran Facebook advertising to people interested in topics related to GeekWire and had them click on them, because those articles aren't always seen. If you don't go to the site, how would you know about them? So if you're a blogger, using Facebook is a really effective way to drive people to your blog. You just have to get a sense of how much do you want to spend and what is that value to. So if I can get you a click at 3 cents or 10 cents or 50 cents, are any of those numbers too high for you? And so that's kind of the question you have to ask yourself as a blogger. I do see bloggers doing advertising. I just think you have to understand how much do you want to spend, which is the best blogs to promote, how do you target, what's your budget, and what are your KPIs? Like, what is the number you want to hit for a cost per click? And we're pretty much butting up against the end of 1 o'clock. You can tell I'm a talker. I talk pretty fast, so apologies if it was a little bit too quick. But I know that most of this will be recorded, so you can always go back on it. Robin, this deck, you can feel free to share this out to anyone that was on the call. I'm happy to have this out to anyone. And I appreciate everyone's time today. We're right on time. So thank you to everyone. Robin, Sean, do you guys have any final words?
I just want to thank you, Chris. That was really informative. Great talk. And yeah, we really appreciate you taking the time to share that information with us. I think it was really useful for a lot of us. And thank you, everyone. And again, if you want to revisit this episode or any other episodes, you can go to our website at www.wcwb.org. And the Let's Talk Business page has a backlog of previous Let's Talk Business episodes. Again, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Chris, for giving that talk today. Everyone have a good rest of your afternoon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you.